Okay, so now I'd like to introduce Rebecca Hall, APR. She's the founder and CEO of Idea Hall, one of the first fully integrated communications agencies in Southern California. As a champion of all things good, she spends her days building relationships, supporting causes and communities, developing ideas, and counseling clients on issues and how to achieve their objectives. Rebecca also serves as the vice chair of the Chapman University Board of Governors and is on the Orange County Business Council Board. Thank you, Rebecca, for being here.
Thank you for having me, Susan. Thank you for setting it up. And as you were speaking, I thought I would, can I share my screen?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so let me do that. Maybe you've all done this, but I'll just show you our example of a PROTOS Award entry and some of the things that Susan shared. You know, clearly we're using just some color to label our areas here, naming out the research we're doing, put, you know, in planning, it asks what challenges you have overcome. And so really kind of identifying those. And then you'll see our measurable objectives are right here. You know, in this case study that I'm going to share with you today was for Hendy. And it's, you know, number one, boost Hendy's brand voice as the go-to authority. And we define what that looks like. Drive at least 50 high qualified business leads for Hendy. Secure feature print story. Deliver optimal budget stewardship with a $4 CPM for the entire campaign. So really getting into those business objectives, not just awareness numbers. And I should have just backed up to say, I'm excited to share an integrated communications program that not only won a Silver Anvil, but also it did not win a PROTOS, and it was the same exact entry. I actually have here the Silver Anvil entry and the PROTOS entry, and it is verbatim. But to, you know, to Susan's point, you don't know who your judge is going to be. So maybe we lucked out at the Silver Anvils and not so lucky with the judges that year for the PROTOS. Who knows? But it's not personal, obviously. It's just, you know, we have a human factor in judging these. So I just wanted to kind of share, in this case, we were able to share our budget and go through the implementation. And I'll back up and I'll give you a little more detail, but just was kind of showing how we format the entry helps us in trying to communicate to the judges. As they go through their scorecard, they can find the information very easily. Moving into the actual campaign, let me go to my little slideshow here. Does everybody see the blue screen? Okay, a little plug for our agency brand. And so as I mentioned, this is for Hendy. They do a number of things, but what we were focused on was during in 2000, when everything shut down, everybody went home and the offices were abandoned. Our client who designs interior offices for wellness, for collaboration, for focus time, all of these things that we need in an office came to us and said, I want to be the first voice that when people return to the office and life has changed because of the pandemic, they should only come and think of Hendy. And so we obviously jumped into action because we wanted to really help her in that mission. And it turned out that it ended up being like I said, a Silver Anvil Award winner, a Provoke Sabre North America winner, and a Award of Excellence at our local chapter. So those things can happen. So I won't walk you through every single piece that this slide says, because there's a lot of words on the page. Our verbose PR fellows here. But I do think what led to the winning entry was not just how it was written, as Susan mentioned, but also a business goal was met. And so we had set out that we wanted to get 50 qualified leads. In 90 days, we produced 193 and just even surprised ourselves. So that was very exciting. A couple other key metrics we met in this campaign was we got Hendy ranked as #4 on Google search, and they weren't even ranked before. And so that was a really great achievement as well. Drove 18,000 clicks on their website, 7,000 which were new users. So really pulling in Google Analytics into seeing how is our campaign running. And we also earned 17 editorial placements. It was just a pitch and 1 press release in this 90-day window that we're measuring, and drove 41 million net impressions, increased website traffic referral by 70% over Hendy's benchmark the year before. So really, those were very exciting measurements. And truth be told, we didn't know what we would be able to achieve. It was such a strange time in the world. Some of these things we hadn't done before for this type of client, but we just all held hands and took the risk that, that we were on a great path and that we would have great achievements. So when we started off with this idea from the client, we said we need to name it, brand it, so much digital communications, because everyone was at home, needed to be visual as well. And so we created this new generation space and the tagline, healthy, well, and resilient. And so just in that context of that first 90 days into COVID, obviously resonated really well with our client, with our target audience. We quickly made a quick brand style guide so that everyone who was creating content, because we were doing this so quickly for multiple channels, everybody would be on the same page, and that it would also be a lasting piece for Hendy to take on after the campaign. This is one of the fun things, pieces of content we created, and just poking a little humor. We all needed a little humor in those days, so I will share this with you. Can you hear it? Okay, let me reset my share so that we can share sound. Thank you for letting me do that. And are we back up and live here? Okay.
Else? Thankfully, the office is.
And then I need to start over, don't I? Sorry about that. Slideshow. I'm getting really good at this.
Is working from home turning you into someone else? Thankfully, the office isn't going away, and the workforce is ready for a new kind of space. Adaptable, intuitive, committed to collaboration and safety, a place where people want to be. The office of tomorrow won't look like the office of today. Get to know the new generation space. Get to know Hendy.
So that was a fun piece that obviously drew a lot of attention. Great little social media spot. Thank you, Hank. Obviously we couldn't film anything. It had to be, assets that we had, voiceover. Everybody's working remote from home to create these things. So that was a really fun piece. And
is working from home turning.
It's trying to do it again. So the next piece, a good old-fashioned pitch to our beloved Orange County Business Journal. Obviously, it was very timely, given the what was going on in the world, and then just a really hard-working press release. Some of the ways we were able to measure the press release were through some unique links and tagging it into Google Analytics and making sure that we could show that, when we put this out here, that it was driving the right business outcomes, not just impressions. And so really going beyond impressions to try to pull it back, because we were trying to get leads. And so, thinking of your press release as that tool, not just earned placements. I mean, earned placements have a large, a lot of authority in what people read and their actions. We're always looking at how can we track it as much as possible. It's still a challenge, but we continue to get creative as new and less expensive digital marketing tools become available. This is a little bit of the ads we took out. So we took some very strategic digital ads where the target audience was very rich for us. Some industry trades as well as business journals, and just some geo-targeting as well. You can see we took out a cover of the Orange County Business Journal. Frankly, mixed results on that because they were being delivered to empty offices. But the digital version of it played hard for us. So, you had to kind of take it with, what's going on in the world at that time. Also a white paper that people could download, and this is how we got their information. You download the white paper, we need your email, your company, and your phone number so we can follow up with you. And that's how we were able to get the actual, what we defined as qualified leads. And one more funny piece of content for social media.
Is working from home turning you into someone else? Thankfully, the office isn't going away, and the workforce is ready for a new kind of space. Adaptable, intuitive, committed to collaboration and safety, a place where people want to be. The office of tomorrow won't look like the office of today. Get to know the new generation space. Get to know Hendy.
Your mother's here again.
So some fun humor poking at that time that we all worked at home and were adjusting. But it really, in some A/B testing, it was just really fun to see how they performed and how you can take, simple social media content, make it just a tad more funny and interesting, and really see it soar. So our whole team is really proud of what we were able to achieve in such a interesting time when I don't think we knew which way was up, but that we wanted to help. And so that's what I have to share today. And I'm more than happy to take questions now or at the end. Janelle, how do you want to do that?
Yeah, I think just for time, to make sure everyone has enough time, let's save our questions for the end.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. I love the designs and the videos. Those are so fun.
It's fun.
Okay, so
just remember, everything is PR, even if they think it's advertising.
For sure, that's what you learn in your APR.
Yeah, I will also make a plug for the APR. I got my APR about 20 years ago now, and my award-winning ratio went way up because they teach to this. The APR and the awards just go perfectly meshed together.
And a lot of judges are APRs and judge through that lens, for sure. Good points. All right, so next up we have Jen Quater. She is a two-pup mama with a big heart. Her professional mission as the president and CEO of the Smart Agency is to advance commercial real estate and finance through effective communications. Her personal passion is to empower the next generation of confident communicators so they can achieve their hopes and dreams in life. Jen is proud to lead a stellar team of writers, creators, and strategists whose collective passion continues to advance the Smart Agency. Thank you, Jen, for being here today.
There we go. Hello. Thank you, Janelle. And thank you guys to Susan and Rebecca. I learned really good things already from your presentations. So I really feel very honored to be asked to be on this panel. I think we have a really strong communications community here in Orange County. We have some really amazing communicators. And so I'm happy to have the opportunity to be presenting alongside you guys. So a little bit just as you heard from Janelle, our company exists to advance commercial real estate and finance through effective communications. We started our firm as Brower, Miller and Cole back in 1994. I acquired the agency in 2018 and we emerged as the Smart Agency in 2020. So that is a little bit about who we are. We do have a very long history with Protos. I had to put in a little bit of fun here. And this is a little bit of a plug for Protos, but it's just to say, guys, this is one of the best team building events you can do with your team. I mean, it really recognizes work. It really, and what a beautiful theme that we've introduced, this collective intelligence. I think there is really a celebration of all when it comes to these awards. So we've learned a lot over the years. And so when I was asked today to share with you guys a winning campaign, we've had a lot of winning campaigns. They've been wonderful. But you know, I looked back and I am someone who always has to do everything a little bit differently. And so I decided I would like to talk to you about a campaign that did not win. And I'd like to tell you really frankly, openly, and honestly why it didn't and where we could have strengthened that entry. And I've broken this down into 3 tips so we can keep it easy for Zoom and kind of keep everybody engaged and paying attention. And I'm calling this Learn From Us. I was going to call it Learn From Our Mistakes, but I'm in PR. Who wants mistakes in a presentation? So Learn From Us, and hopefully this will help. So the client I'm going to talk to you guys about today is Avaneth Capital Management. You guys, this company is incredible. They are absolutely amazing. They invest in affordable housing and they preserve it throughout the nation. And they do that in the private sector. So they're not a nonprofit. They raise money from institutions and then they invest in these affordable housing. They invest in services. They're helping families and workers and people throughout the nation. So, and what we were faced with is really on the business side. So I'm showing you all the fun human side, but on the business side, tying it back to business objectives, these guys needed to raise another fund. And as we all know, fundraising is a very specific and very, there are timelines that you have to stick to. These guys wanted to raise a $550 million fund. And how that's typically done in the private institutional capital space is in-person roadshows. You get on the plane and you go and you sit with these people because these are huge equity commitments that they're making. And now all of a sudden it's 2020 and nobody can fly anywhere and everything halts. And the company's like, hey, how are we going to meet our goal? How are we going to increase our visibility in a fully digital world? And how are we going to be able to raise this capital and keep the integrity of our relationships throughout this digital space? So that's the situation that we were faced with. And so let's go forward. Okay. So tip number 1 is be interesting. When I went back and read our entry, what I will tell you is it was too dry. It was really well written. It was, I mean, our team was, putting in all of the good thoughts and they were following the format, but it really was just a little bit too straightforward. It did not get into the heart of the matter. And this is where we can all, as PR people, look back and say, also, we have to remember our audience. This is our audience. It's us, you guys. It's high-level communicators who are running agencies, who are, driving forward PR, and they're looking at these entries at night, or they're looking at it at the end of their day, and they're tired. So you have to stand out. You have to do something really different. And we kind of forgot that in this entry. So I'm going to give an example that's a little bit of a blast from the past. This is our company's very first Protos entry from 1998. We have a very good archive. And this was for a marketing newsletter that we created for a company. Thanks, Kara. I like that reaction. So this was for a marketing newsletter. And here's what, and look, I can't take any credit for this. In 1998, I was not with the firm. This was Judy Brower-Fancher, who's my predecessor at the firm. She wrote this, but check it out. She used all Beatles song titles and she wove them into the copy. So yesterday, all my troubles seemed so far away. Imagine all the people talking about target audiences. I saw the news today, oh yeah, talking about editorial coverage. So I won't go through it all, but you can imagine that if you're a judge and you're sitting there, now also still follow what Susan and Rebecca told us and still go through all the format. But if you can make it more fun and make it more interesting, you are so much more likely to stand out. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is remember to share challenges. So in our pie structure, and you heard this from Susan, both in the planning section and in the implementation section. In the planning section, we have to outline our tactics, budget, timeline, and challenges. And then we have to come back in our implementation and talk about how they were met. Now, look, our agency, we kind of call ourselves the happy PR agency. Like we do a lot of, a lot of really warm, good work. And I think that sometimes that makes us see things a little bit through rosy glasses. And maybe our team didn't want to feel like they were complaining or they didn't want to do that. But I think it's really important that we remember to share our challenges. So for example, in our entry, we did share one challenge, and that's probably because somebody went through and looked at it side by side with the grid. But our challenge was just about it was on the media relations side. It was something about how, the media wasn't quite understanding the angle that we were taking to them. That was way too micro for this. If we had really zoomed out and talked about the other challenges we actually overcame, it would have really strengthened our entry. So for example, again, this is 2020, and the point is to get these investors, and our client would not give up the idea of an in-person event. Just would not. He just was like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it in person. We're going to do it in person. And this was in early December. And so in order to make sure that there were no challenges, our agency planned 3 events. We planned an in-person event, we planned a digital event, and we planned a hybrid event. And then we made the decision like literally 2 weeks before the date. That's client relations, and that's something we didn't get into that nitty gritty on. But had we done that, we would have really been able to show how that helped how that helped the company end up achieving the objectives, which were to get that fund funded, get those investors in. So my advice is don't shy away from sharing true challenges and how you faced them. And then my last tip is show the how, not the what. And I think this is really important. So again, back to our pie, which is our golden rod for these entries. In the implementation part, we're talking about how we do it. And in our entry, we focused on what we did. We talked about all the different ways that we approach the problem. We talked about our press strategy, our thought leadership, our videos, our event planning. We focused on the 180 quotes and articles that we got for them fully earned media. And so we were all excited that we had them in the media 2 times a week and that we'd gotten that visibility. But what we didn't do was talk about how we did that. What we should have done was talk about how our research, back in the beginning, we did a ton of research when this first came out to look at what's really happening in this impact investment and ESG space, which now today in 2022, and ESG, for those who don't know, is environmental social governance. But it's a big movement where people are becoming more responsible and looking at how this money is invested. Well, back in 2020, this was still relatively emerging. And so we did a ton of research on that. We also did a real deep dive into the humans that had been doing those roadshows so that we could really shift the strategy and start sharing those human elements that you would have gotten in person and be able to share that in a digital and in a, fully through our press, through our videos, through our events, etc. But we didn't talk about that. We just talked about all the great things we did. So I think that is something that would really help us to think about the how. And I have one more example on the how, and that is to evaluation. So in the evaluation, the answer is, how did we do? And again, I've actually pasted in our entry evaluation, and we were very proud of this. So during our time, we secured 181 earned media stories, so like 11 stories a month. We got them in Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal and Institutional Real Estate Letter. These were huge publications that were really influential in helping them to get the investor commitments they needed. And then we did tie it back to a business objective. They needed to raise $550 million. They ended up raising $760 million. And 40% of that was raised during the pandemic. So even though we had all this great stuff that we were so excited about, this is still the what. It's not the how. What we could have done and what would have made us winners is if we had talked about how we increased their visibility among those investors. Again, what were the strategies that we used? What were, how did we make that shift? And then how our efforts, excuse me, dog's barking, how our efforts supported that successful fundraise, and really talked about not only hitting the mark. Boys, Amazon comes every day. You guys, I hope you can't hear my dog barking. So we talked about how, if we had talked about how our efforts had supported that fundraise, and then perhaps how that fundraise was going to impact their business, what they are going to be able to do now that they hit that target. So these are all just some extra ways that we can really make our entries sing. And I hope that has helped you learn from us. So my quick wrap up is, number one, be interesting. Find a way to stand out whenever they're looking at their 15th entry. Number two, share those challenges, just be honest and candid about it. And then number three is show how and not what. And then my hope is this will be all of us at the next Protos event. So thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. And back to Janelle.
Thank you, Jen. I love Ted Lasso, so great ending.
He makes me so happy.
So next we are going to welcome Daniel Rhodes, he's the Senior Vice President at Westbound Communications. He is going to be presenting the campaign that just won Best in the West, or Best of the West at the Western District Conference last week. So we're very proud of having Westbound in our community. So Daniel has more than 25 years of branding, marketing, public relations, and communications experience. Currently, his B2B and B2C client work spans commercial real estate, healthcare, technology and consumer electronics, professional services like law and staffing, nonprofit, and transportation and infrastructure. He received his Master of Professional Writing from USC and his BA in Communications from the American University in his hometown of Washington, D.C. Daniel also serves as the chair of the National Professional Development Committee for PRSA National. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. I appreciate that. Let me get my thing going here. Hold on one sec. Kick it off. Okay, and then I'm going to share screen. Okay. Can you guys see that okay? Hopefully you can. I have some slides to get through, so I'm going to try and go as quickly as I can. So this is, I'm going to just recap the program that we just were recognized for Best in the West, and we also won Best in Show at Protos for this. I'm going to give you a quick background on this. The program was a multi-month program to encourage people to fill out the census, but really, truth is, a lot of people do fill out the census, but there's some hard to count populations throughout the county that we needed to encourage to fill out the census, and they are resistant to doing so for a lot of reasons. In 2010, we had about 71.7% of the county's population fill it out. The county gave us a goal to get to 75%. So we spent weeks creating a community outreach program. We're really good at that. For this, what we called it a sensational egg hunt across all 5 districts. It was going to be kind of a scavenger hunt mixed with the golden ticket from Willy Wonka. And we were going to go to a bunch of community events and lots of community locations like public libraries. And just when we were about to kick it off, COVID happened on March 13th. I mean, literally the timing couldn't have been worse. So we had to shift. And so we shifted everything from what was going to be what I call physical community outreach, which we traditionally think of as community outreach in person. We're meeting people in the community. We're encouraging them to fill things out. We're having them do things, to non-physical. And let me tell you what that kind of looks like. But Susan mentioned that the research is a great place where you can kind of drill down on how you originated your approach, because it directs your objectives, it directs your programming, and it eventually has a causal effect on your evaluation. So we use data to that went down to the neighborhood level to determine where we made our budget spends, and specifics included, we knew, and this I'm going to refer to old District 1 and old District 4, because now we've redistricted, and so they're not the same. But the old 1st district and the old 4th district, high populations of people who don't speak English. And so we created programs like a vehicle caravan. We had OCTA bus wraps and wrapped vehicles going through those areas. And as we progress in the campaign, we really dialed in our research to those lower response rate areas, predominantly Spanish and Vietnamese language neighborhoods. And I'll show you what that looks like as we go. The research yielded the campaign objectives. Now, one of these was given to us from the County of Orange, for whom we were doing all of this, and that is they wanted to reach 75% response rate. That would be the most they've ever had as a county in all the years that they've been doing census. Some of these other things in terms of 20 million overall impressions and 5 million Spanish language impressions and 50,000 click-throughs, that's all cool, but really the one thing was get to 75%. And when COVID happened and we weren't able to go actually physically out into the community, I gotta tell you, me and my team and the folks over at the county, we all kind of lowered our heads and said, well, let's keep the goal. Let's keep the goal and let's see if we can make it happen. So we created a program to do that. Now I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. I'm going to highlight a few areas that were particularly interesting, but we created a lot of stuff. We created fact sheets and posters and banners, and I'm going to show you this. We trans-adapted all of these items into the 12 threshold languages here in Orange County. So it wasn't just about English. We had to do it in Spanish and Vietnamese, and you can see the other languages that are here. And we created posters, and we created banners and tear-off sheets that went into laundromats and other places where a lot of our hard-to-count audiences were going. Door hangers, again, we went into the community. We had to maintain physical distancing, and we did it safely, but we were able to take door hangers and hang them in certain areas where we needed to drive lower response rates higher. Perhaps the most important thing we did is we created an online toolkit that had all of these materials and more materials that I'm not going to show you. And we literally met with all the PIOs of all the cities and all of the agencies in the county to train them on these materials, to turn them into advocates and champions, to use all of this to extend our outreach to their constituents. And so we regularly updated this toolkit with new stuff as we went. We also created a whole bunch of giveaways. Remember, we were going to do all of this in person, and we did eventually get out into the market in person, but a bunch of stuff, lanyards, pop sockets, hand sanitizers, of course, given the time, toiletry kits, flashlight keychains. The key here is each one of these had a particular emphasis to a particular hard to count audience. So for example, in our research, we knew that pillboxes, for example, were something that the Vietnamese population particularly appreciated. So those were trans-adapted into Vietnamese, the messages on there. So each of these giveaways has a particular emphasis for the respective audience that we're after. Maybe one of the most important things we created, and this may be one of those silly things you're like, what, really? A lanyard and a card with the specifics of the census? We created this lanyard and this census card and gave them to literally every single one of the 18,000 county employees across agencies. So health, social services, even waste and waste management, all of them had these cards. So they all wear the badges, and this card would go with it. And so if somebody came in and asked them about census, they would be able to quickly go like this and see it. And this look and feel with the blue with the oranges we took the state census look and feel and Orange County-ized it for our own look and feel. So we got that out across the entire county. And so we had outreach plans, and that involved a lot of stuff. Bus advertising, we did this for 4 months. Again, running strategic bus routes through hard to count areas. Digital marketing, you guys know what this is, but I mean, we planned to have a certain amount of impressions. We far exceeded that. I'll cover that in a second. This is that hyper-local targeting that I was talking about. We had specific census data that we could drill down into the neighborhood level. And so we could go in and strategically find areas where we could apply that digital marketing. So it wasn't just about, oh, let me do social advertising and banner ads. We were able, and streaming stuff, we were able to deliver specific digital ads to specific hyper-targeted locations. And then we were able to track, because those people were, returning their census forms or going online and filling out their census, to be able to see the effectiveness of it. And so we modulated our program based on this level of detail. Social media advertising was specifically deployed in multiple languages into those areas where we knew we had lower voter turnout. I'm sorry, not turnout, lower census response rates. So influencer marketing, again, micro influencers for those hard to count audiences, leveraging their channels. This was also one of the more important things we did. We had video PSAs with trusted messengers in trusted locations. So, and this was literally in front of an Islamic center for people who speak Arabic. This was in front of the Irvine City Hall for some of the Asian languages. This was in a park in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood for our Spanish language spokesperson. I could keep going, but we went out. This is a long 2-day video shoot that we did, but we did it in all 12 threshold languages so people could see, hey, these people are actually in our neighborhood, in our places, and they were speaking directly to them. Traditional advertising, I guess the biggest thing to say here is that we did it in 4 phases, and each of those were based on response rate, and again, focused on driving those lower response rate areas. And then media and traditional outreach. The results were as follows, and I love the fact that several folks, Susan said it, I think Rebecca and Jen both said it. We literally, tied our results to our objectives, but the biggest result, and again, this is where a little bit of it's a meritocracy. We either got that 75% or not. The statewide response rate was 64.8%. You can see Orange County down there in the dark blue. We came in 5th, and we missed 4th by literally like hundredths of a percentage point behind Ventura County. And so, so 5th best in the state. So again, I'm pulling literally language that was out of our 2-pager, which both Jen and Rebecca showed you. So we exceeded that 75% goal. We hit 76.5, which during COVID was, we're pretty proud about that. We delivered 5X on our 20 million impressions. We delivered 8X on our 5 million Spanish impressions, and we delivered 4X on our click-throughs. The click-throughs were very important because that was literally going to the online form where people filled it out. So we were able to paint by the numbers on our results. And then, of course, very proud, Protos Best in Show, and then also rolled up to Best of the West at the Western District Conference a few days ago. Key takeaways, some of this has been said already, but I'll say it again. Communicate measurable objectives that tie to your actual results, and then demonstrate those results with your backup. And that's where you put that stuff into the support materials. Because again, as both Rebecca and Jen mentioned, if somebody sees something that we're like, hold on a second, let me check this out, they can go back and look at it. I'm going to emphasize this. You are telling a story, okay? This is a storytelling exercise. And a story has a beginning and a middle and an end. And anybody that has done story structure knows that along the way, you have what is called the second act crisis. And that is the challenge that Susan and Jen and Rebecca have mentioned. You need to communicate that you had a challenge. If you don't have a challenge, frankly, I'm going to just tell you, you don't have an award entry. And I'm going to tell you to take a step back and go, is this really award worthy? So you not only need the challenge, you need unique and creative solutions to that challenge. When we couldn't do our sensational egg hunts, and again, I'm going to use that dreaded word pivot, we pivoted into other things, and that demonstrated a certain unique and creative solution to what was a pretty tough problem. You have to answer the question in that 2-page narrative, why is this submission award worthy? And a key to that is this. Awards represent the organization, in this case, PRSA or OCPRSA, and they must reflect something on that organization. And I'm going to say new approaches. Okay. So one of the things I wasn't at the reciprocal judging chapter, and I don't know what they saw, but I can tell you, because I wrote this entry, one of the things that's most intriguing to me is the use of data to get down into that neighborhood level outreach. That is something that we PR professionals are just beginning to get good at. And frankly, it's still nascent. And so that's one of those things that for those that win Silver Anvils, those go on to the PRSA.org website, and they are searchable by people forever. And so that is important to remember, that this is, you're reflecting on our profession. The award submission should reflect something new and cool about our profession. So that's it for me. I thank you for letting me go through all those slides, and I will stop.